Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. All right, so just a heads up. I been a little under the weather. I don't think I've really eaten a full meal in about 4 days. Extremely dehydrated and whatnot. So we'll see how much of this I can get through. It is already getting late. I got up bright and early to do the podcast, and it's not working. It's been a very rough day, but I've tried numerous times to get down here and do this because it's Monday, and we're not going to skip a Monday if we can help it. And I think I'm feeling a little better. So here's my plan. And the good thing about this is we can kind of rip through as many of these as we want. And if we cut it short, we cut it short. But, you know, Monday is Mock Draft Monday. Try to adhere to that as best as we can. And like I said last time, I try to do something somewhat interesting as opposed to just, here's my mock draft, here's the people I picked because I think it's the best and it's going to make us the best. I mean, that's fine, but freaking how many times can you do that? You know what I mean? So I had a thought. What if we just kind of gave up on the entire concept of what a mock draft is, and instead of instead of drafting for team need and all that kind of stuff, what if we just picked a position and we said this is going to be the wide receiver mock draft, this is going to be the edge rusher mock draft, this is going to be, because again, part of it is to get cool guys on the Green Bay Packers. Part of it though is to just learn about prospects, and it makes sense from the standpoint of, you know, we've been doing the first round for a long time, and it gets nearly impossible as you move on to really know who's kind of in the range, because the range becomes hundreds of prospects as you get to the 5th, 6th, 7th round, whatever. But it does make sense to say, okay, we know who the first round wide receiver, edge rusher, et cetera, prospects are. What about second round? What about third round? What about 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, whatever, undrafted free agents? And so I didn't really think about it until this moment, but I think we're going to do that, including one undrafted free agent. So that's going to be the plan. Haven't really planned beyond that, so we'll just kind of wing it here. I think just because it's what I've spent the most time on the last several, however many days, weeks, whatever it's been now, I do want to start with wide receiver. And I'm also going to use a simulator. I don't know if I did last time or not, but because I do want it to be, you know, sometimes you want to get away from it a little bit just because you end up making the same picks and everything else, but I do want to kind of get a general idea of supposedly who's in this range. So, without further ado, and last I saw, which was a long time ago, there's no earth-shattering news. If there is, I'm sorry I missed it. I can't imagine a ton is going to get done on the weekend anyways. So here we go. 7-round wide receiver mock draft. And it's, again, I don't have a super solid plan. So, you know, do we get the same type of receiver every single time? Or, you know, could we branch out a little bit and look for other types of receiver? You know, whatever. I don't know. I can keep this little wide receiver tab on the whole time. So according to the consensus board, and this is kind of interesting, all the controversial picks are gone. So Matthew Golden is here. That seems kind of like a no-brainer. I have my reservations about Matthew Golden. But at the same time, a lot of those reservations could fall under the umbrella of overthinking stuff. You know what I mean? A good football player is a good football player. I don't know if he checks that box necessarily. The other problem I have is that the next guy on the list is Alec Ayomanor, although he might make it. In fact, there's 3 guys that I really like. Technically 4. I haven't watched a ton of Besh, but I know he's a solid pick. Man, so we're going to go Matthew Golden here. And we're going to dig in a little bit on Matthew Golden. The next 4 wide receivers. If we end up taking a second-round wide receiver, the odds that I'm going to be pissed, well, it's going to be high because it's the Packers, but it's exceedingly low based on the consensus big board. Alec Ayomanor, Jaden Higgins, Trey Harris, and Jack Besh. I mean, Trey Harris is one of my favorite guys. I've talked about him a ton. Ayomanor, I am a huge fan of. Higgins, I don't remember being as huge on personally. I haven't watched him in forever, but he checks every box with flying colors. And Jack Bech is also a very solid guy that checks quite a few boxes. So we'll go with Matthew Golden here. 4.2940. The guy's got, and the thing is, like, I was kind of struggling with Golden not realizing how fast he was. It wasn't super evident to me watching him, but I began to appreciate him as a player, as a route runner, as, it started to kind of come together for me. And then you find out he's a 4.29 guy, and it's like, geez, that's pretty incredible. A couple different notes here. One of the negatives, I took the notes, and I don't exactly know what this is from, Combine or Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, whatever, but it's fine. It would have just added a ton if I had to type out every single note. I just copy and paste. So anyways, 4.29 second 40 at the Combine. He looked terrific in drills. Caught the ball extremely well, ran outstanding routes. Observers said he looked like an NFL receiver. It says he made emotional plays when the team needed them. Combination skills for slot and outside. Whenever they needed a play, he's the one that was the guy. He made the emotional plays for them. There you go. There's that quote. Third-year junior from Houston. Transferred to Texas after 2 38-catch seasons at Houston. He also returned kickoffs. I know you don't usually want your number one pick doing that, but it's an option. Returned kickoffs 28 for a 25.8 average and 2 touchdowns. He also did an interview. I took some notes from his interview during the Combine. Talks a lot about his Texas identity, being a Texan, et cetera, et cetera. And apparently he was at Houston and the coaching staff ended up getting fired. I think that is a fair point, by the way. There's a lot of talk and scrutiny about the players kind of abandoning the team and whatnot, and NIL or whatever the reason may be. There's also a lot of turnover with coaches, and so you could understand in a situation like this why Golden would say, I like my team, I deliberately chose this team and the coaching staff, and they all got fired, and so now what? So what did he do? As a proud Texan, he immediately reached out to Texas to see if he can get a gig over there. He says his best college game was against Arizona State, so if you want to go check that out. It says it was a standout performance where he carried a chip on his shoulder to prove himself at the highest level. It says he wants to improve his run blocking, which is great. I mean, being good at run blocking is good. Acknowledging that it's something that you care about is probably second best. And then some pretty boilerplate stuff. Believes he can take the jump into the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. So there is your first round pick. Going to be rejecting all trade offers, and we've got Alec Ayamaner, Trey Harris, Isaiah Bond, and Jalen Noel. So a couple of the wide receivers did go off the board. I've been banging the Trey Harris drum enough, and Alec Ayamaner is top prospect right now. He's the only one that is a good quote-unquote value at 54. He's at 53. So we're going to go ahead and select Alec Ayamaner. But Ayamaner is he's one of the almost checks every boxes guy. So to be clear, going back to my little man wide receiver thing, Matthew Golden, I mean, he kind of checks every box except the man coverage thing, which obviously matters, and that's an issue, right? I mean, the speed thing is to help with that. He graded out in the 60s. On top of that, he's 5'11", 191, so he's a little bit undersized. When you're talking Alec Ayamaner, he is 6'1.5", 206 pounds. 8.7% drop rate is relatively low. It's not terrible. It's not the worst. 6.5 for Matthew Golden. 4.44 speed, which is certainly not 4.29, but it's, he's not going to be your Christian Watson. He is there to replace Romeo/Dontavian Wicks. The only knock against him was in 2023, he had a 65 man grade, which, it's not the worst, not the best, but he got that up to a 77, which is, still not elite, but that's solid. So big dude, good speed for his size, and then a 77 grade against man coverage, even without having elite speed, which means you're probably using your size and are a decent enough route runner would be the assumption. And yeah, despite the 4.44 not being super impressive, remember, when you're talking relative athletic score, it is actually quite good, being, considering he's somewhat of a bigger guy. It's an 8.88 out of 10. He has an overall RAS of 971. So the RAS box, although I will say, I do think some things are maybe not necessarily as beneficial when you look at it relatively, because the corner across from you doesn't care relative, right? Whether he can run to you, keep pace with you, it's not about relative speed, it's just flat speed. But you bake in some other things like size and whatnot, and it matters. Ability to get off press and all that kind of stuff. And I'm very sad to say I don't have a single note on Alec Eomanor. It's not my fault. It's everybody else in the world's fault. Nothing I can do about that. It's just funny how I'll get these random people on here, and then after 150 some odd prospects that I've got some rumors and notes on and whatnot, they'll be one of the top prospects. How do I not have them yet? Looking in the E's, I have Easton, well, let's just say Arnold, Efton Chisholm, Elijah Arroyo, Elijah Ellis, Elijah Ponder, Emeka Ibuka, Ethan Garbers. No Alec Eomanor. But all right, let's go on to the third round here. Trey Harris is surviving. Don't do this to me. You're going to make me look like... Okay, he's gone. I was like, you can't do this. I'm going to look like I'm being ridiculous. So, top prospects, we've talked mostly about these guys. I think Nick Nash might be the only one that hasn't really come up, but Savion Williams, Torrey Horton, Ty Felton, Dante Thornton, Nick Nash, Pat Bryant would be kind of that next crew. So let's start with my little man chart here first. So Savion Williams, almost 6'4", 222 pounds. He is a monster. He runs 4.48, which at that size is fantastic. Biggest issues is he has an 11.8% drop rate, which is not good. And this past year, he had a 64 man grade in man coverage. So he doesn't necessarily excel, although in 2023, he did have a 70, so he just made the cut there. So really the drops would probably be the biggest issue. Torrey Horton, he's at 114, so it's a bit of a drop from 92 where Savion Williams is. But Torrey Horton is a every box checker. He is 6'2.5", 196, 3.8% drop rate, 4.41 speed, and has been in the 70s for 2 years against man coverage. So that's looking pretty good. Ty Felton, speed guy, almost checks every box, although he is undersized. 183 pounds is the pill that you're going to have to swallow, but what you get for that is a 6'1" receiver with 4.37 speed that's graded in the 70s in man coverage the last 2 years. 7.7 drop rate is not the end of the world. It's exactly the same as Teteroa McMillan. So there's definitely some interest there. Dante Thornton, similarly, pretty fast dude. He has 4.3 speed. And in some of that NFL Combine IQ stuff or whatever, he leads the charts as far as speed, depending on what you're looking at. So he has definitely got speed, and he is 6'4.5", 205. So, I mean, if you're looking for, not quite Christian Watson, but like a Christian Watson who's almost 6'5", 205 and has 4.3 speed, like 4.30 speed, I mean, that's kind of your dude. However, I will say there's one or two of these guys every year, and some of them get drafted early, like Christian Watson. Some of them get drafted later, like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and that's usually for a reason. And then the next two are Nick Nash and Pat Bryant. Both of them are right next to each other, alphabetically, and both of them are guys that check every single box. Both of them are 6'2". They're both, one's 203, one's 204, so basically the same. 4.57 compared to 4.61 speed, Nash being a little faster, but almost identical. Their man coverage grades were 82 and 81.5 for Pat Bryant, so almost identical. Really, the only thing that's somewhat different is 5.5% drop rate for Nick Nash and 1.8 for Pat Bryant, which is not a negative for Nick Nash. It's just a through-the-roof positive for Pat Bryant. I will say, though, I was not a huge fan of Pat Bryant when I watched him. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's just take Torrey Horton here. Some of these guys are likely to be available at our next pick. Horton and Williams are the two that probably won't be. And between the two, I know Williams is quite a bit higher, but again, Torrey Horton is tough to look the other way on, given some of the measurables and whatnot. All right, I'll tell you what. Let's take a break. It's taking a little longer than I thought, but that's good. We're covering some information here. We'll come back and probably make a pretty quick pick because we're going over the same prospects again. We'll be right back. So honestly, most of these guys will be available for our pick after this as well, but between Dante Thornton, Nick Nash, and Pat Bryant, I'm going to be a little biased here because I didn't care for Dante Thornton or Pat Bryant. I'm enamored by Dante Thornton because of his speed, and I think I was more just disappointed because I didn't, like I've said before, I expect to see something superhuman, like when you set your Madden guy at 99, and that just doesn't really happen. I definitely got to go back and be more objective. But I haven't looked at Nick Nash. And so I can just sit here and say, bro, Nick Nash, 6'2.5", 203, 5.5% drop rate. 4.57 is not the fastest, but it's acceptable NFL speed, I guess. And then 78 coverage grade in man in 2023, 82 in 2024. So I like it. Take a look at his PFF grades. He was in the slot, which is very odd for a guy his size. Obviously, he's a big slot, but what determines that, I still escapes me. 85 grade, 87 receiving grade, 1,400 yards, 13 yards per reception, 16 touchdowns is wild. 2.7 yards per route run, 50% contested catch rate. I don't know his exact age, but he's going to be an older player, which is going to be a pretty big knock. He was at San Jose State for 6 years, at least 6 years. He started playing in 2019. I don't know if he can be there too much longer. I know there's a bunch of that COVID eligibility stuff. Some of the guys that have been there a little bit longer because of that. So yeah, he must be a COVID 6-year guy. But I still like him. And you can't really knock him for being a, San Jose State not being a massive program because, they played, Stanford and, some other teams that are decent-sized teams. Granted, his best games came against, Kennesaw, but don't friggin' worry about it. So Nick Nash it is. At pick 159, maybe one of these guys will come off the board, probably Dante Thornton. No, he's still there. But we got some other guys that we can, not really, they'll be there next time too, but at least one other person I want to talk about is Caden Prather, because he probably won't be there. He's another intriguing guy. 6'3.5", 204 pounds, 1.8% drop rate, 4.46 speed, and had a 73 receiving grade in man coverage in 2024. It was a 64 the previous year. That was the only real knock against him, but some of these are just phenomenal. Again, 6'3.5", 204, 4.46 speed is fantastic. 1.8% drop rate is ridiculous and performs plenty good, plenty well, plenty solid, whatever the thing, against man coverage. He does have just a 7.13 RAS, largely because of his explosion grades, which were listed as very poor. He had a 30-inch vert, which is, out of 10, a 0.97. His broad jump of 9 foot 6 inches was a 2.23 out of 10. So great size, good speed, very poor explosion, and he did not do agility drills. But guess what? We're going to draft him. We could go Dante Thornton. I think that's going to be a pretty popular pick for the very obvious reason that he's tall and fast. But we're going to branch out a little bit here. Oh boy, I see my boy Chimere Dike sitting right there. Wonder if he's going to go. Jalen Lane just went off. Probably should have talked about him. Whew! Chimmy's up at the top. So Chimere Dike, he's at 220. This is at pick 198. Dike is for sure fast. I mean, it absolutely shows up. The acceleration off the line is ridiculous. Out of Florida, 6 foot, 196, 8.7% drop rate, 4.34 speed, and had a 71 man grade in 2024. So the drop rate is not bad. It's kind of in that middle range. He did have a 55 receiving grade in man in 2023, which again, obviously got a lot better. But I don't think I can not draft him here. The other couple guys to talk about, LeJohntay Wester. He is 5'9", 163, which are the only two knocks against him. 3.9% drop rate, 4.46 speed, although 4.46 at that size. 90 man coverage grade in 2023, 82 in 2024, so he actually excels there. But the size is a real serious question mark. Antwain Wells Jr. out of Ole Miss. Got several Ole Miss guys here. I like two of them. I've only watched two of them. But he is about 6'1", 201, 4.58 speed. So this one's rough. 4.58 isn't necessarily a red flag, but it's right on the bubble there. I don't even know where the red flag would be, but it's around there. He also had grades in man coverage in the 50s and then low 60s the next year, which is not great. But the worst red flag is a 15.2% drop rate. It is the 5th worst of the 80 receivers that I have. So that's really bad. To be on the safe side, I want to look at a couple more guys that are kind of in and around the range of our next pick. May end up getting taken. Isaac TeSlaa, Arkansas, 6'3.5", 214 pounds, 0% drop rate, 4.43 speed. If he makes it to the next round, that is a serious candidate. The only real issues here would be the man grades, 53 and then 61. Not terrible, but not the best. But I got to go with my guy here, DK. If we don't have speed by this point and he's available, former Badger, grew up a Wisconsinite from Waukesha. Yeah, you could say I'm rooting for him. I think probably just stick and pick here between LeJohntay Wester, Antwain Wells, and Isaac TeSlaa. Again, Wells, that drop rate is just rough, and then with Wester, the size is a big problem. At this late, to be sitting here in the 7th round, to have the only issue being a 61 issue grade in man coverage, being 6'3.5", 214, 0 drops on the season, 4.43 speed. I think I looked at that. I went back and double checked because I saw the 0, and I'm like, yeah, this dude, I mean, maybe it was a different guy with 0, but I was like, yeah, he must have played 4 games? No, it was pretty much a season. He played, it is him. So he classified is the word I was trying to think of, as a slot receiver. Again, big slot receiver. But played the whole season, 36 targets, 28 receptions, 532 yards, 0 drops. In fact, he had no drops the year prior either. So in 100 targets, 62 receptions, 0. He has not dropped a single pass in his 2 years in Arkansas. And even if you say that they're kind of with his usage, it was kind of 2 half seasons, fine. It's 1 full season still with no drops. It's crazy. Dude has phenomenal hands. So that's an easy one for us. Isaac TeSlaa out of Arkansas. Actually do have quite a few notes from Isaac TeSlaa here, randomly. So at the combine, completed the combine workout, impressive testing at 214 pounds with 4.43 speed, 1.51 second 10-yard split, excellent jumps, 39.5-inch vert and 10.9 broad jump. One of the better pass catchers, despite not being the quickest route runner, go figure, with the hands that he's got. Great eye-hand coordination with fluid movements and soft hands, again, duh. Wowed with an over-the-shoulder reception. Dude, don't drop anything. And then at the pro day, he maintained his combine numbers, 4.43, 40, 4.05 short shuttle, 6.853 cone, 39.5 vert. Met with the Bengals on Sunday. Interest from the Patriots, Titans, and Seahawks. Draft projection is middle round prospect, up from the initial low-level free agent grade. So this is probably... us getting him in the 7th round is probably not going to happen at this point. You're looking at 3rd, 4th round, 5th round, kind of 3rd to 5th range. And that's probably because of what he did at the combine, right? You get a second look at this big, massive guy that actually seems to play football really well and has phenomenal hands. Somebody's going to take a flyer in the mid-rounds. So we'll happily take him here in the 7th, but don't expect that to be where he stays. All right. Final pick here for the wide receivers. We still got LeJohntay Wester and Antoine Wells, not interested. So let's take a look at, first off, Efton Chisholm. So this one's a struggle. He's got a 4.84 RAS. He's 5'10", 195, and ran a 4.71 at his combine. The agility was elite, which kind of checks out when you're a smaller guy. Probably actually helps that you're a little slower, too. It's hard to change direction when you're moving fast. His explosion grade was just okay, with a 34.5-inch vert and 9.10 broad. Only real notes I have on the guy, he did improve his time at his pro day. He got just over 4.6, so that's obviously much better than 4.71. Shaved a whole tenth of a second off. His 3-cone, 6.77, that stands. Says slot receiver with return skills. Seattle Seahawks are interested. Official 30 visit scheduled with the Baltimore Ravens. We also have Samuel Brown, who is a wide receiver out of Miami. 6'2", 200 pounds, 4.44 speed. He does have a 10% drop rate and was in the 50s and 60s in man coverage. Again, not the end of the world this late into things. Played for 3 different teams, never really graded out super great. His final year at West Virginia was a 71. His final year at Houston was a 73. His first years were never that great, which kind of makes sense, right? It takes some time to adjust. So the way that this lays out, first year at West Virginia, 63. His final year there was a 71, although he didn't play very much. He goes to Houston. First year was a 64. His second year was a 73. He leaves and goes to Miami. First year is 64. So he hasn't stayed put. I don't know the reason behind it. Maybe there's a good reason. It really feels like he would have benefited from just staying put at some point. Possibly could have continued to improve, grown in his ability to get more opportunities. Seems like every time he went somewhere else, he ended up losing opportunities, aside from West Virginia, where he either got hurt or they benched him or whatever. He didn't play very much. But, yeah, his opportunities went up from Houston from year 1 to year 2, and then he goes to Miami and he loses some opportunities again. But I think I'm going to go with Mr. Samuel Brown. He has the least red flags for me. PFF isn't great, but I looked at the guys after this. For example, Will Shepard and Jimmy Horn, both from Colorado. They didn't grade out very well either, so there's no point super digging into it, especially for someone like Horn, who's an undersized guy. So we're going to go with Samuel Brown. And I know I said we do undrafted free agent, but it just shut down my draft, so I can't really see the board anymore. But I'm fine with that. Matthew Golden, Alec Ayomanor, Torrey Horton, Nick Nash, Caden Prather, Chimere Dike, Isaac Tesla, and Samuel Brown. A lot of these guys, there's a lot to like here, and that's the crazy thing about the draft, is there's so many guys that there's reasons, really good reasons to like them. Most are still not going to pan out, but there's absolutely going to be some gems in here. There's some absolute freaks. And I'll tell you what, the timing kind of sucks. We don't have enough time to do another one. I don't really have a lot else to go on, and I am feeling like crap. So I'm actually going to just bounce. My whole goal was to make sure that there was a Monday podcast, especially a mock draft one. I feel I've accomplished that. Probably not going to get another highlight video up tonight. I don't know when I'm going to be feeling better, hopefully soon here. But I'm ready to rock and roll. Maybe I'll start cranking out some songs to have them ready. Again, patreon.com. I don't know if you guys are in there, but if you want me to do some hype videos for these 2025 prospects and whatnot, let me know. And I'll get to work on putting these videos together. And Craig, I did get your thoughts on Patreon as far as the highlight video. I'm trying to focus more on 2025 prospects. If I get around to it, we could do different types of videos like that. That would obviously be a very cool one. But I'm just trying to rip through as many of these 2025 prospects as is possible. But patreon.com/pack_daddy. If you'd like to join, you can do so for as little as $1 a month. I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.